Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This webinar is going to be an interview talking to Heather and Angelina about their personal experiences with periods, PMDD, and piecing that all together. So first of all, I'm Brett Buchert. If you don't know me, I am kind of communications lady at IAPMD and have helped facilitate the events since PMD Awareness Month this year. And I'm joined by Heather Hendrie and Angelina. And Heather is in Canada. She is a wilderness therapist and also has curated this amazing book that's the second installment of kind of awfully hilarious series. And I think we've got a lot more to come from Heather as well. And also Angelina. And I had a bio for you, but I didn't want to, I'll get to that in a second. But I do want to share just briefly our disclaimer, just that this is an interview, this webinar is for educational purposes, and that these are personal perspectives, not prescriptive and in any way. Take what you want, leave what you don't. And always in anything we share or that you're hearing, consult the trusted professionals in your life and also your own values and beliefs when making decisions. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and then pull up Angelina's bio because I didn't want to get it wrong. But Angelina Jimenez is an author, ancestral healer, and community advocate. And she experienced power periods as a teenager and has now found ways to turn her cycle into something bearable and even beautiful. So I'm going to start with just asking these ladies to share their stories with their periods, how things started, their experiences with PMDD, and where they are now. So if Heather, you'd like to go first, that would be wonderful.
Sure. And thank you for having us here. It's really an honor to be here in this community. And I'm so moved by what the IAPMD has done for the community. It's actually how I found out that I had PMDD myself a couple of years ago. And as you mentioned, Brett, yes, I'm a clinical counselor, wilderness therapist. So I do nature-based therapeutic work. But it wasn't until a couple of years into my own journey as a counselor that I recognized that symptoms I'd been dealing with for 30 plus years were in fact PMDD. So I'll just speak to it very, very briefly, but I did want to say to everyone here that I have PMDD. I have a personal experience of it. I'm sure many of you have a personal experience of it. Those experiences are different. But for me, what happened, hindsight, I'm much more clear than I was at the time. If I sort of look back to my teenage years, I really get lost. But I'm very, very lucky. I've had a very happy childhood. And then I got my period and a switch flipped. Something happened. Within a week or two, I developed a really serious eating disorder, anorexia, which I've since learned is highly comorbid with PMDD. The wheels just fell off. So for years and years and years, I had these ups and downs, which I didn't see the pattern at the time because my experience with my period and a big part of the impetus for this book, really the full impetus for this book, is to get conversations started about things that have been shamed, leading to unnecessary hurt. So I grew up loving to run and play outdoors and ride my bike, and I was always called a tomboy because that was just me being myself. But born in a girl's body, liking those things, I suppose that made me a tomboy. And that's a whole other conversation when we get onto the patriarchy, et cetera. But what happened then when I started to bleed, I never wanted anyone to even know. I just basically tried to ignore it and pretend it never happened. And I had more ability to really understand what was happening to my body and embrace that, I think it would have become a lot clearer a lot sooner that there was a very clear pattern to my symptoms. And it would have likely been a much quicker path to diagnosis than the 30 years that it did end up taking, in both in the society we live in and a lot of the personal shame I felt around living in a menstruating body, period.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, period, like that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I said
I said it out
earlier.
loud. I didn't whisper. Period.
Yeah, I love it. Just ending on period made me reflect on how we got connected. A couple of years ago, you submitted a blog to us, and I was just kind of coming on to that space of like editing our blogs. And I really connected with your piece and the way you wrote it, and that it was kind of like all interwoven with like symbolism and words were chosen like specifically. And that just really resonated for me and helped my growth in this space and my growth as a communicator and the kind of the power that comes with putting our words out there to other people. So I just wanted to mention that Heather's been in our space for a while and has always been a wonderful force. And about the book a little, because I just skipped over it, but it's an anthology of different people's experiences with their periods and their menstruation from like the beginning stages into menopause. The last few chapters are about the ride of that. So thank you so much, Heather, for being here and for sharing your story.
Thank you.
So Angelina, if you would like to share your story, that'd be wonderful.
Thanks, Brett. Hi, everybody. I'm Angelina. Pronouns are she, her. I was telling Brett and Heather when we first came into the room that if you had told me even 6 months ago, a year ago, that I was going to be sitting in a webinar talking to, I think, 28 people in the room about my period, I would have laughed. I'm like, why? Why would I do that? And then I submitted a story to the Awfully Hilarious Period Pieces book, and it's just been so wonderful to have these conversations. And I think I'll start with sort of kind of the beginning. I don't remember my first period, but I do remember the anxiety of getting my first period because my mom also has PMDD. I have PMDD, and I didn't realize I had PMDD until I was 23, 24. I just thought it was how everybody experienced a period, that the heavy bleeding, the 2 weeks at a time of me just being a mess. Quite frankly, I was suicidal. I was just didn't want to be in this planet. If I wasn't suicidal, I was anxious. If I wasn't anxious, I wasn't eating. And all of those things all came together and I figured it out. I was like, wait, there's a thing called PMDD. Maybe I'll look at that. And all of the puzzle pieces came together in that moment for me, that what I had experienced, and I talk about it in my piece, Period Wars, in the anthology, about how I had seen my mom's period. And I was like, oh, this is just how it is. We would slam doors, we'd be yelling, all of the things. And that was just what it was. And I didn't realize when I was talking to all my friends about our periods when we were in like high school, that that wasn't the norm, that that wasn't how most people experience their menstruation every month. And even now it's gotten a lot better. My periods are not as fraught with the really low lows and the really high highs. It's gotten a lot more even, but it's still really hard. I went to the store yesterday and I got a bag of gummies and they're gone because I was like, wait, what's going on? Where am I in my cycle? I check my app and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm a week out from my period. That's why. But yeah, I wasn't raised in a household that really talked about periods. I went on birth control and my dad picked it up one day. And my mom calls me, and I'm very Mexican, if you couldn't tell by the last name. And my mom was like, hey, your dad is at Kaiser. And I was like, what do you mean he's at Kaiser? She's like, he's picking up your birth control. And I was like, oh, great, perfect. We never talked about it. Never once talked about it. It just happened, and that's kind of been my experience with my period, is that it's always been hush hush. We don't talk about it. It doesn't exist. And unfortunately, that's kind of how it is in society still, that we don't talk about it. It just exists in my little lady cave every week. It's uncomfortable to talk about still sometimes, and even with writing the piece, and I talk about my period is open to the world, but I'm still like, whoa, am I really talking about that? But yeah, that's kind of been my experience with my period. My relationship with my period has gotten a lot better. I don't dread it every month, which is pretty significant when you have PMDD, and it can be for me, it's usually the worst 2 weeks of what feels like my life. And then I have to do it all over again in another 2 weeks, basically. So that's kind of a brief synopsis of my story and my relationship with my period.
Yeah. Have either of you noticed that your experience with PMDD changed by getting closer with your periods and your bleeding and your cycle in general and talking about it, or did that not have an effect or a negative effect? Or I'm just curious about that.
I'll jump in there. Angelina, I love that you used the word relationship, because honestly, I work in the realm of relationships, being a clinical counselor. And for me, one of the most significant PMDD symptoms has been real challenge navigating relationships, including that first relationship with my period. And I actually feel an immense debt of gratitude now to my cycle. And I feel it's so interesting. I've worked as a clinical counselor, but I feel like who I am is um a writer, and that I'm here to help support and shift the narrative for other people. And so I actually feel in very loving relationship. And when we talk about like very physically speaking, like have the symptoms changed? Have my ups and downs changed? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm in a really wonderful, stable place now, but I think recognizing that it's for a reason, that the pain points that I have been through in my life, if that can in any way be supportive and helpful to somebody else, it gives me a far greater sense of purpose, and it helps me navigate, even if there are still highs and lows, which are significantly less traumatic than they used to be. I navigate it in a really different way. So for me, yes, that shifting the relationship has changed everything. And Angelina, I'd be curious for you, and Brett, for you too, because that word relationship just seems so fundamental to it all.
Yeah, I'll jump in. For me, it definitely has gotten better when I recognize that I am actually in relationship with my period. It's not just happening to me and I have to go through 2 weeks of hell every month. Because that was my perspective for a really long time, was, okay, great. I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to hate everything, hate everybody, and hate that leaf that fell while I was walking too. And now I'm like, okay, I have my tools. I have people that I can be like, I'm having a week and I don't want to talk about it. It is what it is. So that has really, really helped me to be able to manage having PMDD. And something else that is kind of adjacent to that with my relationship that really helped is I have CPTSD, which is complex trauma from being very young and having a lot of trauma. And when I started healing that, and I looked it up, there's research that PMDD and PTSD they occur together, because your body it just can only do so much. And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not going to get into that. The research is there for those that are interested, but that was something that really made all the difference with my relationship with my period with PMDD, was also working on my unpacking trauma that I had been through, healing that, and also like recognizing, hey, my body needs XYZ to be okay during my period. And I'm not on birth control right now because it was really making things a lot worse for me in my experience. But once I stopped fighting it and was like open to the possibility that I had a different choice, that I could be like, oh, okay, let me talk to my doctor, tell him that I'm bleeding profusely every month. And that really helped kind of make things a little bit better for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's it's all a part of it. And when I was first kind of diagnosed with PMDD, to me, it was very like mental health issue. Like this was like my mental health diagnosis, which it totally is. I mean, we can think of it however is best for us. But it was missing that like menstrual health piece for a long time. And then actually, I think through connecting with my period and my cycle really did help me. And the first kind of step for me was switching to cloth pads, which not saying like it physiologically helped me, but just like it became like a ritual of I had these like really cute like cloth pads that I got to use once a month. And that was special. And then that, other things unraveled from there, that it wasn't just this like nuisance experience of being a woman, that then also correlated with like my worst experience in life of having the PMDD episodes. So yeah, there's definitely the connection with the period in PMDD for sure, and shouldn't be neglected, I think, by all of us and by doctors and by researchers. It's such a huge aspect, I think.
I'm giggling because I'm sorry.
Yeah, what do you say?
I'm just giggling because my piece in here is called finger painting, and it's sort of a misguided attempt of me trying to get into deep relationship with my period too early, using a tool that somebody else had suggested for me. And I just, Brett, I'm really appreciating that you chose an approach that was right for you and creating some ritual for you. And that's something I'm really going to take home with me, is that idea of building relationship and ritual around something that is special and sacred, as opposed to something, and like Angelina, you said this, as opposed to something happening to you over which you have no agency, something that is an important part of being a human that we can embrace. And in the case of PMDD, there's a different bodily response. But so I just love we're weaving together the physiological and also the psychological, the spiritual. There's a lot more there than it touches a lot of realms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely does. And I like that you said, like, you tried too early to do something that was not where you were at. And you're just like, well, somebody told me to do this. And even if maybe if you'd done that same thing later, it could have had a different result. But yeah, this is such a journey we all go on, and we have to tune in to where we're at in it. So I do want to touch on with Angelina and you too, Heather, because you bring it up in your chapter, Angelina, about how having your mom experiencing these same kind of severe experiences of her cycle, that you thought that was the norm. And then you didn't realize that your friends weren't as well. And in my work in this space, it seems like a lot of people share that they're just like, I thought periods meant, horribleness. And then my experience is more, I thought I was this like anomaly, like uniquely broken girl, because it's not what my mom had, it's not what my friends had. And I'm just kind of curious about that. There's both those poles within this community and how that might shape our experience. So if you want to touch on that anymore, Angelina, and also Heather, share your experience with that normalness.
Yeah, I think my definition of what normal is, there's no such thing as normal, especially talking about periods. We all have very unique experiences, and I think at a certain point I hit like, nothing is like, how could anybody's period be this bad, especially when I found out that I had PMDD. Before, I really was like, like, this is just how it is. I saw my mom get so mad she would throw things and make holes in the walls because she was on her period. My dad would take me and my brother out of the house when she was on her period, because it meant that, and I talk about it in my piece, that it was war in my house, especially because our cycles were synced up. And she would get hormonal, I would get hormonal, and it was just a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare for my family to have to navigate, both of us having no idea that this was what was going on. I don't even think that my mom knows that she has PMDD now. And the only reason that I know is because I had somebody else that I knew that had PMDD. And I was like, hey, this thing is happening. And that was when I was like, wait, this doesn't happen to everybody. Everybody doesn't bleed profusely for 7 full days. That when my friends were like, oh yeah, mine is like 4 or 5 days, not super like heavy. I'm like, what? You don't have to use tampons, pads, have backups for the backups in your car, like in your locker in high school, especially. And that was mind-blowing, that I thought for so many years that my period was whatever it happens to everybody, that everybody was miserable for 2 weeks. Because that made sense. Everyone's like, oh, periods suck, periods suck. I'm like, yeah, they do, because it's 2 weeks. For me, it's 2 weeks of, I am cranky, I get irritated at whatever. Like, I could hear a noise outside and I'm like, get away. Like, I will swear in my apartment when I hear something and I don't expect it. And that's something that I was like, cool, like that's how everybody feels on their period. And it wasn't until the last couple of years that I was like, wait, maybe that isn't the case. Maybe some people just get their period, they have like a day or two before they start bleeding, that they're like, oh, I'm a little grumpy, and they can manage. They get their cravings for whatever they crave, and then they're good after that. And they get 5 days, I think, is kind of what the quote unquote normal is for most people that menstruate. And it still blows my mind that there's so many of us out there that have this experience of like, either, like you said, Brett, either side of that pole of, either I'm the one that I'm the only one that this happens to because we don't talk about it. So how are we going to know? And this is happening to anybody else if we don't talk about periods, if there's that stigma behind it of I can't talk about it because it's this shameful thing, or because we're also not talking about it because there's a stigma, because you're in a household where your dad's saying, hey, hide all of your things, they can't be out, you don't have periods, they just don't exist. Like, see, we don't see it, it's not happening. And that was part of why I was like, okay, this is how it is for everybody. So that's really been my experience, that in the last few years, it's been really healing and wonderful for my relationship with just having PMDD, dealing with the high highs and the low lows, to be able to recognize that I'm not the only one dealing with this, and I'm not in this like vortex of suck all the time alone. It feels like that, but there's also other people that probably every day of the month are experiencing the symptoms that I have. And it's pretty sad, but it's also pretty cool that I'm not alone dealing with it, and that we were able to make a book. We had a book of people that have experiences, not all with PMDD, some with PMDD, and talk about it and start having these conversations, because it's so sad that there's other humans out there that maybe aren't menstruating yet. They're like, we just don't talk about it. And they have this notion of shame already before it even happens. And I'm really, really proud to be part of this journey, this story, because it's so important to talk about it and not have those poles of being with the period.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just seeing Caitlin in the chat saying it feels good not to be alone. You are not alone. And Angelina, hearing you speak to this, and Brett, for you to say that you have the experience feeling like a uniquely broken girl, which I can really relate to that. That's more my experience. Or for you, Angelina, that like the experience of being a menstruating human should be this particular form of hell. It's so wild to me as I hear that. Like for years I've thought, does this fit into gynecology, endocrinology, psychiatry? Is it mental health? Is it physiological? It's everything. But as we talk here, and I think really like we're on a mission around talking about this, because I think this is actually, it's a cultural problem. And this is where Brett, you and I had spoken before the call, but this idea of what if we're the canaries in the coal mine? And a canary on its own actually might sing and then go silent and is dead so other people can leave. If we're together, we may not have to die. If we could sing in chorus, because I really do think this is a cultural problem. There are cultures around the world that have embraced menarche cycles in a totally different way. So this lack of conversation and the stigma that you've spoken to so eloquently there, Angelina, it's hurting people. And that's why I think we're so lit up about this. And Caitlin, I saw another question she had asked, is there going to be a second book? This actually is the second book. The first was, I went on a really bad online date and it turned into this anthology of amazing online dating stories. So teaser, if you're interested or you're online dating, come check that out. But Angelina and can I give the teaser, Angelina?
You sure can. Yeah.
We're actually working on a third anthology right now, and that one's going to be speaking more to marginalized experiences around sex, pleasure, and intimacy, because we're realizing everything that we are not talking about or making taboo, where there's shame, can really hurt people. And it's not helpful to have that experience of either feeling like a uniquely broken girl, Brett, like you and I have felt, or that it's somehow horrible to be born into a menstruating body, or a particular body that has been oppressed by our cultural narratives.
Yeah, so important. And the topic you guys are writing about now, I think it's all interwoven, like about in this space of being a menstruating person, being a woman, however you identify, it's all related. And all it's the shame you say, I think, is a huge piece. And that's one thing we kind of can address together. Yeah. So Heather, kind of building on this, your story touches on a lot of topics that really kind of light me up personally, and you talk about a journey of embracing femininity, as we touched on, and how maybe you weren't ready at that time, that you were trying some new things. And want you to talk more about kind of your personal experience in that realm of connecting with yourself, embracing femininity, realizing these like larger societal issues at play, and kind of what the journey was like for you.
Yeah, thanks. It's a big question. And I'll share from my personal experience of it, but I'm also just excited to have a much bigger conversation going forward about like what is femininity. I don't really know. I'm still in a process of exploring. I just at a certain point as a little kid, and I might get emotional about this, but and this is what I'm in the midst of writing more of a memoir piece about my personal experience with PMDD and sort of the lead up and what it's been like. But as I'm writing that, it's very hard to write it. I'm realizing that there was a certain point as a child where I learned that it was better to be a boy at that time on this planet in the society I'd grown up in. Or that's somehow the message that I took, that a lot of the things that I wanted to do or that I was drawn to were perhaps somehow not for me. And so I spent a lot of time just trying to, I think I tried to spend a lot of my life just trying to be a bit more like a man, if that makes sense. And then there's certain times in a cycling body, once I hit my teenage years, there's about a week, a month where my hormones are at a particular level that I do really well in this society we live in. And then there's 2, 3+ weeks a month where things are shifting and really different. Yeah, again, I had mentioned that I basically pretended my period didn't happen for a long time, but as I come more and more into connection with the idea that if it weren't for cycles, if it weren't for periods, there would not be human life on Earth. And as I start to understand that more and recognize that a menstruating human can do whatever they want to do, there are certain normative cultural rules that actually may not be true and have nothing to do with occupying a menstruating body or not. They were just stories that I feel really engaged in rewriting the story. And then, Brett, it's really interesting that you mentioned that blog piece I wrote, Closer to Fine, for the IAPMD. I wrote that about 2 weeks after I discovered the IAPMD and realized that what I was dealing with was PMDD, because the minute I learned that there was an organization to help people and finally had words for what was happening for me, I wanted everyone to, I immediately wanted to reach out to everyone because my path to diagnosis was about 27 years, give or take. And I didn't want that to be the case for others. I'm not speaking so much to the idea of femininity because I'm still holding that question for myself. Like, what is masculinity? What is femininity? I don't know. And I think what I'm really in is this process of just trying to be more me. And as I'm being more me, to also, I'm still shy. It might not look shy. Here we are on a webinar, so thanks for making it easier to be here. But I want to talk about this because if it could help somebody out there to feel less alone, and I keep seeing that message in every webinar I've gone to with the IAPMD, is this resounding, you are not alone. That we don't have to suffer in silence. So I didn't speak that eloquently to your question. Maybe Angelina will have something better to say to that.
I feel like what you say is, I mean, I feel similarly. It's like, what is femininity? What is masculinity? What does it mean to be me? And I think that's so right. Like the answers are not as clear as maybe we wish they were, but maybe that's the point. So yeah, Angelina, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can talk about the femininity, and then I see a question in the Q&A that I would love to answer as well. For me, femininity right now is kind of like what Heather said, is figuring out who I am and figuring out what that looks like for me. I am not a girly girl. I'm not the like wear the ruffles and dresses all the time, but I like to work out. I like to lift. I like to do strong things and play rugby. I'm trying to get back to that. And for me, it looks like embracing all of me and not just hiding behind the shame that I am so often told, like, well, you're not feminine enough. Like, you need to wear dresses to be feminine. You need to do all XYZ to fit into the mold of what is expected of you as a woman. And I'm like, do I really have to do that? I don't think so. I still I like to wear a little bit of makeup sometimes, but I also sometimes like to wear makeup and play my sports, which is not what a lot of people do. And there's some phenomenal Olympians right now, Lona Mar, who talks a lot about that. She's a rugby player. And it's been really beautiful to see those conversations happening around what femininity looks like. I see 2 questions. Can I go ahead and talk about?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Julia, I see yours about suggestions for period trackers and journals. I just started using an app. It's kind of witchy. Like with the moon cycles, it's pretty cool. Looks like Brett developed one called PMDD. I use Stardust. It tells you like what phase you're in, what day of your cycle. It's such a beautifully curated app. It's like, hey, your pimples are going to start coming today, and lo and behold, I wake up the next morning and there's a pimple there. So that's been really wonderful to just have a little bit of joy around that tracker, because I've tried 20 probably different trackers, and so I really love that one right now. As for the question in the Q&A, how accommodating has your workplaces been when you're in the luteal phase with PMDD? I'm in that phase right now. I tell my boss, I tell my team members, I'm like, hey, I don't say I'm in the luteal phase. I'm like, hey, my period's about to start. But I just say, hey, my brain's not fully on board this week. I'm sorry. I'm doing my very best, and I'm so blessed to have a wonderful boss who was like, yeah, go away, go offline for 2 hours. We got this. It's fine to do this webinar. But they're just so accommodating in that way of understanding and being like, okay, cool. If you're not on board and you're fully present and doing your job 3 weeks out of every month, and there's just 1 week that maybe you're not operating at 100%, that's okay, because the work that you're doing is great, you're doing good, and I appreciate letting me know, is kind of what my boss says. So that I feel very lucky that I'm in that situation. I know that that's not the experience that a lot of people have. It wasn't the experience that I had in my last job, but it can be really hard to navigate that. And yeah, my thoughts are with you dealing with that. And I've really tried to start advocating for myself and just tell people what I'm comfortable with, that, hey, I'm having a hard week. And thank you for having some patience with me while I deal with this week. And just take it day by day and do whatever is going to be the most supportive. So, yeah.
I also think to that question, Angelina, I'm so glad you spoke to that and your personal experience. And in Shalene Gupta's book, The Cycle, she speaks to this idea too of PMDD in the workplace and how we might navigate that. And I just a couple of weeks ago was lucky enough to have a really great chat with Sophie. She has an Instagram handle called the ADHD Cycle, and playing with neurodivergence and PMDD. And we had a really fascinating conversation about the idea of dynamic disability and ableism in the workplace, and how at times we may have capacity to show up differently in the workplace. And I can't speak to that with any level of expertise, but I was really, really delighted to be able to speak with her. And I hope we'll see more coming out about that, about how to, because it also touches to the question about, I had mentioned for me with PMDD, relationships are a real challenge. So how we navigate both the internal experience, but then the world around us, workplaces, friendships, partnerships. And I'm seeing in the chat here about Caitlin, a great new app around PMDD, apps for PMDDs and in relationship and partnership. I think it's going to be an ongoing topic of conversation. But Angelina, I just really admire your courage too, that you speak really openly and you work with somebody who's really supportive. I think that's the ideal. In my case, I work for myself as a clinical counselor. And so I kind of adjust my schedule based on where I am in my cycle, which is an enormous privilege to be able to do that. And we can't always, but I try to pay attention to where I might be at a certain time and create my schedule accordingly, which we, of course, can't always do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my experience with work, I work for IAPMD, so of course they're very understanding here. I can say I'm in my luteal phase, but I find with my cycle, like abilities at work or things that might make me triggered at certain points, and other times I can handle them fine. Like that, learning my cycle, and where, like, the person asking the question is in the legal field and they have to like read a lot, and maybe there's times when you're better at like the reading the documents, and other times when you're just like such an advocate for your clients. And so maybe the cycle can be a potential resource in that. Like, I don't know, of course, your whole situation, but it can be a resource. Oh, and about tracking, because Heather said I did develop an app, maybe PMDD, which is very kind of symptom based. So if you want to like dig into each symptom, that's cool. But what I do now is I chart on like a little circle, and I write, little words that resonate with each day, and that's what feels right for me right now. So if anybody's tracking, like, do find what, like Angelina said, she tried so many, so find whatever feels best and supportive to you, because that is the best answer, not what anyone else will tell you. So okay, so the book is all about like breaking through the taboos of menstruation and not talking about it and all of that. And before we got this webinar started, we were all saying that though we're here, though this is a big part of our lives, it's still hard to have these kind of conversations and bring it into the light. And so I was just curious, both of your perspectives on continuing to talk about periods and how we do it in our personal experiences, like whether it's like bringing up your cycle to like a new partner or something like that, or even discussing it with girlfriends. And what's your take on making the conversation louder and easier to have, less taboo?
For me, it's really sitting with the shame that I feel, because it's taken me a very long time to accept that my feelings aren't bad, and that shame is that's what society has taught me. That's what many men in my life have taught me. I'm sorry to any of the men that are here. It's just the reality. They're like, ew, you're on your period. I don't want to know about that. I don't want to know like what tampons you need. And I'm lucky to be single, so I don't have to have that conversation. But it's really kind of almost pushing myself out of my comfort zone to like even be in the anthology. I was like, oh, do I want to talk about my period? I don't know about that. I think that's crazy. But I did it anyway. And I'm trying to do more things scared, because it's not a bad thing to do things scared, to talk about these hard topics that it's only going to change when we talk about it. We can't, sit, as much as I love sitting in a webinar full of people that are like, let's talk about PMDD. It's even more important to talk to just people in your life that are close to you about your period, about your struggle with PMDD, with bleeding every month, because it's a struggle. Like, let's be real, it's a struggle. And being open with it. And that's been really hard for me. I'm working on unpacking kind of the shame behind that, of this thing that happened, that's natural, that happens every month for everybody that has a uterus, pretty much. Like, not everybody, most people that have a uterus. So trying to work through that. I'm not perfect. It's a work in progress for me, and I think it will be for quite a while, but slowly but surely.
I love that, just the idea of sitting with the shame, which is, about being there with our emotions, which is an extremely difficult thing to do sometimes, but that often is the path forward for making changes in our lives. Certainly something I'm going to be doing as well.
I love, I've been lucky enough to live in close proximity to a number of the people who've submitted stories here. And one is a fantastic person by the name of Steph Nan. She's a librarian at the Skokomish Library, not too far from where I am here. And her piece is really, really funny. It's called The 6 Stages of a Flight to the Moon. And when she says her next career, I'm sure, is as a stand-up comic. Wait for it. But she delivers it in such an incredible way. And I find myself like peeing my pants laughing. I'll tell you more about the title, Awfully Hilarious, in a moment. That's really deliberate. But even at the end, she will speak to audience members after delivering her story and say, and yet I still feel compelled to say period, or put the products up my sleeve as I go into the bathroom. She's saying, no more of that, enough of that. And yet it's interesting, we're here in this webinar and I still feel shy to have these conversations, but I'm compelled to do so because I think it's so important. And for me, my approach is always easier for me than talking, even though it might be hard to believe I'm talking a lot, has always been writing. So that's been my way. And actually, I worked with a designer on this book, a friend from high school, and he came up with this, you're overreacting, or are we? And I think that's going to be my next mission. Stay tuned for it. Hoodies that say things like this, slow stigma smashing slogans. So I may not even have to say a word, but my hoodie could say it for me. But if anyone here feels so compelled, what we'd love to see is for you to request copies of these books in your local libraries, or if you feel so inspired to be a book fairy, putting them in little free libraries everywhere so that people can see a book with blood on the front and read 26 unique personal experiences, periods, and menstruation. And it's been so cool to see medical professionals coming to our talks, or like you'd mentioned, Angelina, just having more and more medical professionals educated, more and more people able to have the conversation, because it's hard. I would say for me, it still feels very hard, and we've pulled together a book about it, so I can only imagine how it is for others.
I do want to get into this question that someone put in the Q&A about they've joined different support groups, but they feel alone because of cultural challenges that come with being a first-gen Latina in the US, navigating the healthcare system, mental health stigma, language barriers, machismo, Marianismo. How have you navigated any of the struggles I mentioned above? How have you navigated feeling a connection even amongst PMDD community?
Oh, yeah, I read that and I have to take a moment to just hold space for that, because I didn't expect that question to hit me right in the heart center, and it really has. It's really hard. It is really, really hard. I struggle with my mental health. I have PMDD, like all of the things, and I have, my dad is from Halos, so very small community, and it's been really hard, especially with my dad. My mom is white, my dad is Mexican, first gen, I'm first gen. And it's been really, really difficult to hold that and navigate it and feel like I have belonging. Because of that, because of the cultural component of the shame of, in especially Mexican culture, and I'm just going to speak to that because that is my experience. The machismo part of that is I'm in charge. I know the things, but all of the things that happen to you that impact you on a daily basis, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Just handle it on your own. That was periods, my mental health. When I started dating at one point, because I'm a very loud-spoken person with my dad, and I've challenged that for years and years and years, and I always tell him, I'm like, we're in the US now. You don't get to do that. You don't get to have these double standards with me and my brother, where I have to tell you what I'm doing every single moment of the time, but my brother can drive your truck at 15 without a license. That's wild. And I call him out. I call him out on the things that in my mind aren't as big and hard, like mental health and talking about PMDD, talking about my period. When he picked up my birth control for the first time, my mom called me in a panic, and she's like, your dad, I told him I had to go to Kaiser, and your dad said he was gonna go, and he went and picked it up. And I was like, oh, great, okay. He just slid the bag over to me because they had to tell him what it was, and we didn't talk about it. We didn't talk about the fact that I was on birth control, that I was having sex, and it was just the time of the month for me. So it's been really hard. I still don't know how to manage it very well. I have a really hard time talking with my dad about anything personal. I am 28 and I know my dad loves me and cares about me and wants the best for me, but he also doesn't have the emotional maturity and the skills, I would say, coming from a very male-centered culture to be able to have those conversations and not further that shame around the topic of, well, just don't talk about it, deal with it, and I'll get you food when you're out, because food is his love language, as is common for many Hispanic fathers, I have come to learn. And that was how he took care of me, was he would get me the food that I wanted. He would do the things that he knew how to do without having conversations around it. So I try to hold the pain, but also the recognition that my dad comes from a culture, I come from a culture where we don't talk about it. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. And trying to work on how I can undo that narrative for myself before I start having those conversations with my dad, because I've internalized it so much, and that was part of why I got emotional reading the question, because I'm still struggling to navigate that. And I wish I had a better answer other than I'm right there with you, feeling that difficulty and feeling connection with other people that have this kind of challenge of like the cultural barrier of talking about it, because it's so easy when you just have like the culture of the world that is like shame, don't talk about your period, but to add to having a family, having a very specific culture that says don't talk about it, don't talk about your mental health, don't talk about it in English, don't talk about it in Spanish, just it's that time. It's that time of the month, and then that's it. And then I go to my room and I have my period in silence and alone, and then I come back a week later and we continue like nothing happened. So this is a very, very long answer to your question. I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart, because that's why I'm here to do this, to remember and that I'm not alone, to remind the folks that are here that they're not alone dealing with it. Because especially for me as a Mexican American, we have so much work to do. We have so many conversations that need to be had, and it's going to be a long process, and that's why I am emotional. I'm holding back tears right now, speaking about it, because it is isolating. Caitlin, I see that in the chat, to live that experience, and you're not alone. To the attendee that put that in there, I'm here feeling that with you. So thank you again for that. I don't have a perfect answer, but it's brutal, it's hard. And I do hope that to the person that put this in, to anybody that is living this very kind of specific cultural experience, that you start talking about periods with yourself and your community, maybe not your parents, if that's who the hard conversations are, but to start talking about it, because that's the only way it's going to change, is when we start unpacking that these hard things that we have to navigate as, for me, Mexican American. So yeah, I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelina. So I want to ask you both if you'd like to share what things you found most helpful in your journey with PMDD, with periods, with finding healing, with managing, with treating, kind of anything that you want to share in that realm with those here.
Do you want to share, Angelina?
You go ahead, Heather. I can share after.
Work in progress, ongoing adventure. But I really think that having an understanding of what was happening helped me come into a sense of agency, to really recognize that there was a very specific physiological thing happening for me in response to hormonal shift, made all the difference. And it's interesting, in an approach of therapy called Hakomi therapy, we sometimes talk about this idea of an insight barrier. And Brett, I could really relate to your idea earlier about being a uniquely broken. When I understood chemically what was happening for me, and this is where I'm really keen on further research for PMDD. Shout out more research for PMDD, please, and in particular as relates to intersectionality and impact with people of color. Like, we need research in these areas, in areas where people have been left out. and forgotten and deliberately oppressed. It has really dangerous impact. But when I started to understand scientifically what was happening, it made a very big difference. Then I had some more tools to address it. Medication is something that has been extraordinarily helpful for me. In fact, it's probably the one thing that has made the biggest difference, but there's a whole suite of other things. And then understand, and for me, I really specifically plot out on a calendar in front of me where I can see, where my partner can see what's happening. I need that reminder because I think I'm also starting to realize I'm likely neurodivergent. I'm going through the process of starting to understand that better now. But one thing really interesting that I learned in that conversation with Sophie at the ADHD cycle is that very often neurodivergent folks can be really amazing with pattern recognition, but not necessarily to have the perspective to do that for themselves. So for me, friends and partners previously have always thought this was very funny that every single month, like suddenly I would be in the bathroom bleeding in my underwear. And I'm like, what's happening? Oh, this again. Even if I had it on an app, even if it, there's it pinging off on my work presentation, period coming, it's still a shock every time. So a lot of this is, for me, is just about coming down to understanding the chemistry of my brain and myself, such that I can connect to what's going on. And then to this piece is community. And this is where, for the person who asked this question, thanks for your courage in asking this question. We need community. And how isolating and awful to go to a place where you would hope to find help and feel like you're the only person in the room having a particular experience, to feel even more isolated in a space where you're going for help. And I can't speak to that with any level of lived experience as a white person, but I have gone to support groups. I have gone to places where I was seeking support for PMDD and was the only one in the room with that experience. And I can recognize where just how isolating that can feel. So again, I don't have lived experience in that realm, but for me to be able to speak and be seen and experience validation where possible, but also and again, this is a conversation for your trusted health professionals, but medication has given me the leg up to use all the other tools. That's the one for me that really was necessary. And Shalene Gupta does a much better job in her book speaking to that. I'd highly recommend it.
For me, what really helped with my PMDD, I guess I try to be a logical human being. I need really set things that work and that don't. Unfortunately, but fortunately, exercise is really helpful. One, for my ADHD, and two, just because that's what my nervous system needs to like be settled and okay. And knowing what kind of workouts really make me feel level-headed again, because there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And then a day later, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So exercise has really helped. I have a psychiatrist who I have anxiety medication for when that PMDD, like, oh my God, the world is ending feeling happens. That's really what I lean on when I have to. And like Heather said, it's just a tool that helps me. But I think really the biggest factor for me was working through some of the like early childhood trauma, because for whatever reason, and I researched this for a little while and I don't really want to get into it because I don't want to give the wrong information, but having high cortisol and impacting your hormones in very different ways, it impacts the intensity, excuse me, of the PMDD. And when I started to kind of unravel that, it was really hard. It really sucked, but it also helped me be able to not have as awful cycles, and recognizing too that it might feel like it's the end of the world, but it's not. I just have to get through the next hour, the next day, and be okay with that. And yeah, I really admire the person in the and not the last question, just the courage, like you said, Heather, to really speak to the fact that it's really hard as a person of color to find that community of people, because I think in the broader world, there's already a stigma of like, hey, we don't talk about this, it doesn't exist. But when you're in the body of a person of color, it's even more so. Like there's the shame and the don't talk about it, it's not happening, just handle it because you're a woman narrative. And that really, as weird as it sounds, it really helped me navigate my journey with PMDD and my relationship with my period, when I was able to kind of separate the two and be like, hey, this exists, but it's also not bad. Like, it's a good thing that I get a period, and just working through that on my own, which is isolating. It sucks that there aren't more communities, and the accounts that I see on social media that talk about their periods are primarily white women. And this has really lit a fire for me to start talking about it more on my own platform, because there's not enough people that look like me that can help build a community, so that there isn't so much disconnect. And when I've built community, it's really helped me navigate my period and my symptoms, and be able to be like, oh, I'm not alone. There's people in my corner dealing with this too. So that's kind of what has helped me navigate this weird, crazy journey that is having PMDD and getting a period that sucks more than most every month. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, with that, whenever I ask people this question, there's always so many elements, like the medications, the supplements, the lifestyle changes, the perspective changes. Like, it really is a multifaceted effort towards feeling better. So as we wrap up, do either of you have anything else you'd like to share about the book, or what you're working on, or any perspectives on PMDD that you want to share? Sorry, I don't know if you just heard my cat meow. But yeah, anything else to say?
We're talking about hard things. Is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah.
We're talking about really hard things, and I just feel so blessed to be in the presence of such courageous humans who have taken an hour out of this on a summer day to be here to have these hard conversations. And I'd like to close by just saying I feel hopeful. Like, I was overwhelmed by the response to this book, the number of people who submitted stories. And the first story it's a poem from a young woman who's 11 years old, and it's called "I Want My Period, God Damn It." And I'm going to close with that because that's the world I hope for. It is not the world that we have grown up with in North America, and yet I feel really hopeful and optimistic. The fact this conversation is happening, these conversations were not happening when I was growing up, where I was growing up. And I just couldn't be more delighted that we're here in community having this conversation.
Likewise, I feel very, very grateful that I'm here, that I get to be a voice and to share the strength and the hope and my experience that I've had. And I want to end answering this question from Abby that is in the chat. How you can be mindful of people. And so the question is, how can I be mindful of people feeling disconnected from our community and my support groups? I never want someone to feel unsafe or unwelcome. Being open to listening, to not just listen, but to practice active listening and acknowledgement of different cultures and different experiences, and uplifting those voices when they are in a support group, because 9 times out of 10, we see it immediately. We come in the room and we clock people because it's a coping mechanism. And I'll just say, I should speak for myself. I do that. I will go in a room and I'm like, oh, this is primarily white people, and acknowledging that there are other cultures that maybe are not speaking, that are not represented in the group, that have a very different experience, and doing research on your own to understand kind of what the stigma is for other cultures around periods and shame around menstruation, and all of those things can be really helpful to kind of bridge that gap of, hey, this is not just the experience for everybody. There are multiple facets to this, of the cultural components for people that come from all different backgrounds. So thank you so much to everyone for being here, for staying for this wonderful, amazing conversation. I just feel so honored and blessed that I was invited to speak today. It has been really, really wonderful, and some amazing questions that have been great for me. So Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you both, Angelina and Heather. And I'm so glad where this conversation expanded into, because the whole point of the book is not when you talk about PMDD, like I said, it's like mental health, you kind of think, and then that we approach that other stigma of menstrual health periods. And then now we're bringing on another layer of the kind of cultural challenges and all the personal challenges that add another layer. And I think that's what this is all about talking about it, about growing into the areas that this needs to grow into. So thank you for speaking to your personal experiences. And for everyone here who joined us, thanks for joining in. Please order Heather and Angelina's book, Awfully Hilarious Period Pieces. It's on Amazon. And also $1 from each book sold is donated to IAPMD, so it helps to support the organization as well. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week, and hopefully we'll see you all again.